share, the Rejuvi, a Rejuvi resource, and then, provide kind of, the direction or discussion in that form, right? So just bear with me for a second here. If all goes to plan, this should be a very simple thing, but sometimes it's not. So, all right, here we go. Can you see my screen? It should have Rejuvi. It basically should be our website. It's Rejuvi, where leadership, inspiration, business transformation converge. Okay, great, fantastic, good, success. So this is our website, but I only bring it up to kind of set the context for where we're going next. This is really the portal. This is our window to the world, where everybody that we work with, all organizations and leaders we work with, when they want to come into that world, the one that you just described, which is, hey, where do we want to go? Who needs to go on that journey? And then how are we providing resources to make sure that we're landing on X, right? That is a world that we enter via logging in from here. So when you go in here, you could just log into the system, everybody gets, a credential to come into the system. But when you log in, you come into that world, and that world, to your point, is about, hey, who's where do we want to go? Who needs to go on that journey is all happening here. But the place I want to take us to today is really a mechanism or a resource that we have, Harold, in terms of how the system actually works. Like how do we bring it all together? How do we create a trust vectoring, ecosystem that is all about leveraging leadership development analytics, right? So I'll just bring up something that we are very proud of, which we call kind of, our Modern Leadership Capabilities Playbook. And within this playbook, if, just one second, this should load in a second here. It's really a journey that we are taking organizations and leaders on. And what we refer to as this Modern Leadership Capabilities Playbook is really all about leadership to business impact analytics. And put very simply, what that is that's X, right? The business impact is X. And the business impact is really all about top line, bottom line metrics that drive growth. It could be metrics around, value, operators. It could be around people. It could be around operational metrics. It could be around a plethora of metrics within those three buckets. But the notion is that for every single time we put an effort in place to develop our leadership bench, we need to be knowing what X are we trying to impact. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Critical.
So that's the idea. So it goes to your notion of saying, hey, we better know where we're going. So we do actually have a process, and we do have a very mindful structural approach to facilitating conversations inside organizations, saying, hey, you're going to be making a big investment in your leadership bench. What do you want that to achieve for you? And not in just loosey-goosey terms, in very black and white terms, like what metrics or what X's do you want to land on, right? Boom. Then what we do is we basically have this, this engine, right? In terms of then how to do that. How do you identify the X? How do you identify the pilots who are getting into the cockpit? And how are you giving them the tools they need to have? And how do they do course corrections along the way so that they're landing on X? And we refer to it as input, process, output, Harold. But really, I think the thing that you or most of folks we would say need to keep in mind is it's really three things. It's the input is really all about saying, okay, now you have the pilots identified, right? And the X's. What capacity and capability do these pilots have to actually take this rocket ship and make it land on mission, right? That's what this input world is all about. It's going into the space of saying, can I, evaluate or baseline or benchmark my pilot's capability and capacity, right? And that's the first very important step of the Rejuvi approach, which is a very structured, organized, predefined way of saying, hey, listen, your pilots need these 8, 9, 10 things to land the ship, right? Now, if you pick an X, well, guess what? They need to have these within that plethora of things. They need these 2 or 3 things absolutely well developed, because if they don't have that, guess what? The chances of you landing on X are close to 0, right? Or at least the predictable chances of landing on X.
Right.
to zero. Do you know what I mean? You probably still be landing on X just by pure chance, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is that we do that where you create this, this attribute layer of very granular data on the leaders at an individual leader basis, and then roll them up to the organization level and get a benchmark. And then we just don't do that one time. Remember, we said we want to course correct, right? So you bring that in, you create the data, you identify where the engine needs to be built to get to X, right? But then when you get on the journey, guess what? You need to keep creating that feedback loop like you were talking about, right? Like this thing about saying, hey, am I on track? Am I doing right? Am I doing right? Am I eventually, increasing my chances of landing on X? And that just doesn't happen with one measurement point, right? That doesn't happen with one data point. Like you said, you need multiple data points. And you need multiple data points that have a lot of diversity and richness in them that then let you build your thrust vectoring system. And that thrust vectoring system, the magic of that happens in taking the data and taking your benchmark or your baseline, taking measures on that as you're making your journey to understand where am I on track, where am I not on track, and then intervene in those gaps. And guess what? As you do that again and again and again, and you do it in a very methodical, intentional way, you can actually find causal links, right, to changes in your inputs, to changes in your outputs. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. What I love about it too, and it really starts with simplifying the problem. And this is where I can action on 3 to 5 leadership competencies. I can't action on 45 leadership competencies at the same time. Right. So analogous to our earlier conversation, the upfront input is really to sit, who's playing the game, where are we going? Let's simplify those key things that matter. And then we'll continue to measure and build processes to get to those, to get to that destination as we need. That's really hits home for me as a leader, just making it simple and actionable.
And then you can provide quick metrics, right? So this is something, once again, I don't want to get into the details here, but here's some metrics, and the metrics will tell our pilots. Remember I said that dashboard that is feeding back information that allows them to quickly summarize and make judgment calls. This is analogous to that. So quick heat maps to say, all right, you know what, here's some heat zones. You need to be paying attention to these. Here's some things where you're on track. So keep going, right? You can do this at the leader level. You can also do this at the team or the team level, basically saying, hey, as a business, as an organization, where is the work to be done? And the work to be done is here. In this case, this team, well, this business is all about doing work on understanding what their strategic intent is, what their mission, vision, values are, and not so much on their ability to deliver or implement on things that are already strategic value. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's almost like saying they know what to do. They know how to do it. They just need to spend some time on picking the right things to do. Does that make sense? Just putting it very quickly. Yeah.
Absolutely. I do love the fact too, this goes from sort of, it's the full journey, right? It's not just the strategic thinking, but it's also the execution thinking and how we lead through that change. That's the other important piece is oftentimes we rest on what we're great at. And this is just a very simplified way for us to understand, I've got to work on these components. Oh, by the way, these are my assets I have to really lean on as we get, into the strategy or into the project.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the idea here. The idea is that, when we say thrust vectoring, really it's kind of a call sign, right? It's kind of a visual way of really bringing to life what we're talking about here. It's not just about thrust vectoring. It's about getting to the place where you can actually create a thrust vectoring engine that allows you to course correct, and you can leverage your leadership analytics and basically land on X. And really there are benefits to doing it. Obviously, there's a lot of success that we're experiencing as we go into this journey. And so that's the idea here.